Welcome everybody to this week's edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Thank you for taking the time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community mentorship and learning. I'm your host, Dave Albright. We've got Dave Nava on here. I'm a lead solution engineer at Salesforce and Military Trailblazer. Each week, we invite a co-host or co-host to take part in the conversation so that we can leverage their experience, expertise, and unique perspectives. The focus for tonight's session is exploring product management roles in the Salesforce ecosystem. And I just lost my screen. There it is. So if you're interested in product management and wondering if it'd be a good professional fit for you, this is a good session for you to listen to. So our co-hosts for tonight, I'd like to welcome and briefly introduce our co-host panel for tonight's session, Jessica Crane and Leigh-Anne Nugent. Jessica is the Senior Director of Product Management at Salesforce. She's been with Salesforce just over 4 years, managing infrastructure and platform engineering products, and most recently focusing on IT product development strategy. She has nearly a decade of product management experience. Next, we have Leigh-Anne. She's a solution architect and product manager specializing in field service and may have a slight update for us tonight. She's been with Salesforce for over 3.5 years working with field service. Her previous experience includes system administration, marketing, communications, business analysis, and consulting. So great to have both of you co-hosting office hours with us. So welcome. And
thanks. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It'd be great if you could each take a moment to introduce yourselves further and share your Salesforce stories. Jessica, would you like to lead us off?
Happy to. Thank you so much. Excited to be here. Thanks for the invite. Like you said, I've been here for just over 4 years now. And I actually come to Salesforce from a variety of backgrounds in startups. So for anybody who has worked at startups before, you get to wear a lot of hats. And over the course of that time period, I actually started as a data analyst, thought that I wanted to grow up into research and database engineering, and was very quickly thrust into a role where I was working more directly with customers. And my role was really to talk to our customers and our clients, figure out what it is that they needed from our software, and come back to our engineering teams and help them build a better product so that we could sell more, retain more, and grow our revenue. And I remember very clearly the day that my mentor, who was a product manager at Google at the time, told me what I did was actually product management, that it was kind of a new thing that they were doing at Google, and set me off into this career path. And over the course of that time, most of my experience was in data products and building new products for the market in a variety of different verticals. Joining Salesforce, I remember very clearly my interview with our VP of infrastructure at the time, and I asked him, are you looking for somebody to manage your portfolio of infrastructure products, or are we looking to build a product management functionality? At the time, they didn't have product management for infra. It's kind of a new thing. And he said, we need to stand up product management for infra. And so I joined 4 years ago. We kicked off an agile transformation, built a product management organization, and did that for infrastructure for about 3 years, after which time I moved into my new role, which is transforming BT, which is IT internally at Salesforce, but business technology. We are undergoing a full-scale agile transformation to align all of our different teams to a common way of working, and aligning product management, engineering, design, and agile methodologies in a consistent way across all of BT. So that is currently my scope of work right now, and really, really excited to be here talking to you all.
Yeah, thank you. Leigh-Anne?
Wow, that's a great story. Thanks, Jessica, for sharing. So I am, I would call myself an accidental product manager. I started off as a customer relationship management administrator, not really knowing what I was doing. You have somebody who wants you to build a report and you realize, well, I don't have data to give that to you. So then I realized, oh, I can create a field and start populating that data. So I slowly started to become or fall in love with CRM systems, and then it started implementing them, starting with a tool called Maximizer, and then Microsoft Dynamics, and then another private equity fundraising tool called Situate, and then finally Salesforce. And once I got my fingers on the keys of Salesforce, I didn't want to turn back. You know, you can Google anything. The community was awesome, pretty intuitive until you get into, deeper and deeper into the product itself, but we won't get into that yet. I haven't looked back. So I became an implementer of Salesforce. And while I was implementing, I became an application architect because I really wanted to make sure that the products that I were building or the solutions that I was building was actually sound, and my customers would actually be able to use them without any errors or bumping into any unknown errors. So yeah, I became an application architect to perfect my craft. And then I joined Salesforce 3.5 years ago to be part of the customer success group as a product expert, or a product architect is part of the architect team. They changed their name so many times. At the time it was called Skippy, and I thought it was the coolest name ever. And then they changed the name, and so I decided to hop over to the product team because I didn't like the new name. No, I'm just kidding. I realized that I really liked the idea of product management because there were so many features that I thought, hey, we should have this in field service. Like almost 90% of the customers that I'm talking to are asking for this feature, and I can build this. I'm doing this for all of these projects. Why don't we just productize it? So getting those user stories in, learning agile, learning jobs to be done was one of the fun things that I got to learn as a product manager in field service, mostly customer facing, and then a little bit of research and development. And I will share the quick update. In January, I was part of the first cohort of, well, not the first, I'm sure there was another one before me, but I was part of the group that was let go from Salesforce. So I had 3 months off to explore what I really wanted to do. And product management was one of those paths, but I did think that I would go back into consulting, because what I really love doing is creating those Salesforce solutions for customers. So I am joining Rafter One, and I started yesterday, though I'm on like this whole IT onboarding thing. So I'm really just kind of buckling down and onboarding, if you will. So excited to still be in the ecosystem. I haven't announced it yet because I haven't really hit the ground running yet. So I'll be making that announcement soon.
Yeah, thank you. I think we'll probably explore that just a little bit as we go later, because I think a lot of people that come to these meetings, right? Everybody in the ecosystem right now is a little shaken, a little nervous about the layoffs, right?
Yeah.
Everybody kind of checks that email in the morning like, ooh, is this the email day? And I say that sarcastically, but it's very true, right? I just saw Jessica shake her head, right? Like, ooh. So we'll talk about that. And really one of the things I've known you for a little bit now, and your resiliency to that is, I think, really worth discussing, right? Because how you handled that, I thought you were in denial, I'll be quite honest with you. You were just like, yeah, it's good. And I was like, what? So anyway, we'll talk about that as we go.
Yeah, best thing ever,
For those joining for the first time, always like to briefly explain the purpose of these office hours before we open the floor for questions and discussion. These sessions are an informal get-together for gathering with military trailblazers and allies to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding-related topics to help you achieve your professional development and career-related goals. The next hour is intended to be an opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on the call is encouraged to step up and help answer questions from your perspective, which will provide additional diversity of experience to the answers given. Please keep an eye on the chat window during tonight's session. I and others on this call share a lot of great information there, including learning, networking, and employment opportunities. If you'd like to ask a question at any point during today's session, please feel free to do so. If you don't feel comfortable speaking up, you can also post your questions in chat. I'll do my best to monitor the chat window and also be looking for raised hands. And finally, tonight's session is being recorded. If you'd like to share an attribution-free comment, please let us know before speaking, and we'll make sure it's edited out of the final recording. With that, let's get into some questions. Let's start off very quickly. Jessica corrected me this morning because, quite honestly, I should know better, but I always kind of get it wrong. The difference between program management and product management. Let's explore that a little bit, and we'll kind of peel that back, because I think if I'm getting it wrong, there's probably a couple other people on here that get it wrong too, and it is important to the, how we fit into the ecosystem. So I'll turn it over to my co-hosts. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can start off. This is a really common one, especially it depends on what type of organization it is too. So our typical ways of developing software or infrastructure, any kind of technology, you kind of either have your typical waterfall, or you have your typical agile shop. And agile, to be clear, is an umbrella of frameworks. And the key difference between the two is waterfall is very specifically, you kind of go off, you create business requirements, you determine what it is you need to do, you create a project plan, you execute on the project plan, and then you test and release kind of at the end. And it tends to be more of a formal and longer term method to develop and deliver. The difference is we can have agile project management, which is where a lot of folks are running to, but agile just means that we have this constant cycle of feedback and iteration. So we're not going to go off and define 100% of what we're going to build within the 6-month period. We're going to define what do we think we're going to build, we're going to start building it, and then we're going to test it and iterate it and get a better sense of what the best version of the product or the end result is going to be as we continue to develop it. And so within either one of those, I think the role of product management totally changes. And the role of product owners, product managers, there's a lot in the ecosystem of product itself. So I'm just going to be talking about Agile today. I think most of technology organizations are moving to some kind of an Agile delivery method. And project management is more closely associated with waterfall delivery methods, although there is a need for project management and program management in an Agile delivery model. A project just meaning that there is probably a lot of teams that are going to have to contribute to a single stream of work, and we need somebody to organize that critical path of work delivery. Who contributes what, when, what are the timelines that we can expect, how do we keep ourselves on track to deliver this thing on time. So I typically say that project and program just meaning that we have multiple projects contributing to one stream of work, which is a program. That is all about when. When are we doing it? Are we on track? Are the timelines right? Do we have the right people working on it? Do we need additional support? And product is all in the what. What do my customers need? What are they asking for? What are their business problems? What do we need to build in order to make their lives easier? What do we need to improve in order to make them more efficient? What is it? So that what or when, those are the really easy ways to determine. When I ask people, they say, I'm not sure exactly, am I project or a product? I'm not totally sure. I've had this conversation so many times in my lifestyle. And I say, okay, do you determine what we build, or are you determining when it gets delivered? And that's the key differentiator between the two. And in many cases, you could have somebody playing both roles. You are both determining what we're delivering, and you are responsible for when we deliver it. It depends on the complexity of the product. It depends on the scope of the product. It depends on the maturity of the organization. But that's really the big indicator between the two.
Leigh-Anne, you're muted.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think as a project, a PMP, and an implementer, I would say that studying product management principles really helped me in my role, because I would layer in a little bit of product management elements into my projects, because there is an ultimate product that we will be delivering at the end. However, I am really running a project. So having both elements really complemented my delivery mechanisms, I guess you could say, or methodology to my customers in a very unique way, because they appreciated that, yes, there is a product, but there is that whole project management side of timeline. So yeah, having both, I think, really adds a significant value. So that's a great differentiator, Jessica. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, if nothing else, on your V2 mom for today, you can put, you taught Dave Albright the difference between program and product. You got it. And so that's a good point, especially as you come into the ecosystem or you get near Salesforce. You start to look at, like, who are these gods that create these cloud products, right? Or whatever the product is, and you're like, and that's actually how Leigh-Anne and I met, was working for one of the big projects I had to start working with Salesforce Field Service, and that's how we ended up talking. And so it is, I think, not, as you come into the ecosystem, you're just trying to figure out how you can get into some kind of role, right? And then you start kind of see the roles. And I think eventually you kind of start to have that idea of who creates these things? How do I get involved in that? Where does that process go? So we'll probably kind of explore that a little bit. And so let's start to pull that thread a little bit. What's involved in developing a product vision and strategy for the products? Not everyone wants.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Jessica. You can start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I am a firm believer in outcome-based success. What is the outcome that we are trying to drive towards? And if we own an outcome, then the how of how we get there, that's going to change. And that all goes back to that agile methodology of iterating. We think we have a way to get there, and we're going to push out an MVP, and we're going to try it. But we might need to kind of course correct and change how we get there. But ultimately, it's by saying, my users or my customers have a problem that they're trying to solve. And my vision is that I'm going to deliver this outcome for them that is going to be valuable, and that they will pay me to use this product to solve this problem. And if that is the ultimate vision that we have, is this delivery of an outcome, then as we try different things and determine the road of, again, how we get there, we know where we're trying to get to, and we can keep ourselves either moving towards that outcome, moving away from that outcome, and that helps us to figure out if we're on the right path.
Yeah, I would second that wholeheartedly. Knowing what problem that you're solving is the number one thing. So in field service, we really embraced jobs to be done. So while in Agile, there's user stories and jobs to be done, these are actual tasks that end users are looking to fulfill or accomplish. And there's multiple layers, just like there's multiple layers in Agile with an epic. Instead of an epic, it's a steel thread, and then it goes down and down all the way down to the actual task that they'd like to perform. And it follows a similar story, like, as this persona, I'd like to do this so that I can accomplish that. So like Jessica's saying about outcome-based success, yeah, like, what is the ultimate end result for the customer? What are they, what's the problem that we're trying to solve so that they can be what, like, there's a good book that I liked, it was called Seeing Around Corners. And that book really articulated what that framework would be. And so I would recommend that book as something to study, I guess.
So with that, essentially, it's really no different than any other implementation or build, right? Like you said, you're using Agile, you're really doing user stories, looking for a desired outcome from the product, no different than if we built an org for someone.
That's right. And I think that's why I really liked the product management principles, because from a Salesforce perspective, we're building solutions for people or for businesses, right? At the end of the day, that's what we're doing, leveraging the platform that's been built. So understanding those principles just really, really helps when you're out there out in the streets.
The mean streets, the ecosystem with Astra running crazy. We have a question from Melissa. Is there a certification that we can earn to make us more marketable? And Melissa, if you want to, well, I'll tell you, we can just answer that question of in general to make you more marketable, and then probably more marketable in the PM side. I'll put that up.
We actually talked about this a little bit today, David. So product management as a function, like I said before, it totally changes in an agile organization versus not agile organization. And agile actually has a role called a product owner, which is a specific role, sometimes a title in places, but it is a role. And I always recommend agile certifications, agile product owner. You can do advanced certifications, but those are really helpful. There's also Scrum Master certifications. I find those to be helpful as well. Kind of that whole ecosystem of agile certifications, Scrum methodology is really helpful as a basis for understanding. And I think product ownership is the heart of product management, and it includes both your thought process and mindset, as well as what is your day-to-day tasks. So thought process and mindset is you are the voice of the customer. You need to represent the customer's interest to the development team so that they can build the right thing. You need to frame the business problems in user stories so that they can understand the problem to solve. You need to be able to roadmap that out so that you can describe to your users and customers what you're going to be building for them. And then there are day-to-day duties of how do you support the engineering team in building the right thing. So all of that product ownership is done at the team level. And typically what I see is that product owners advance in their career to be product managers. Sometimes they can play the same role, sometimes they're different roles. The difference between the two is a product owner is internally facing to the team. They take the strategy basically from the product manager. Product manager is going to be more of a strategic role, more business and customer facing, more market facing. They're doing a lot of the analyses for strategy, and then they translate that down into the product owner who supports the team from a day-to-day perspective. I wouldn't say there's a lot of standard, because product management is kind of a newer function over the last 10 years. There's not like an industry standard for it. I've seen a lot of different ones. So the one that I have seen most frequently in market-facing roles is from Pragmatic Institute. They have product management track that you can do. But again, I would kind of look at a few different ones, but start with product ownership.
Yeah, that's a good one. The Scrum Master one is if you're a task person, you like, herding cats and keeping the ducks in a row, excuse all the animal analogies. But if you're that type of person, you might want to take a look at the task of the Scrum Master, because that Scrum Master is that person that makes sure that, each one of those user stories are really defined. How long it's going to take. All the engineers have everything that they need. They understand what they need. And then if they don't understand, then they pull in the product owner or the product manager to reshare the vision or give some more clarity. And then, then the engineers can go off and do the work. But yeah, the Scrum Master is a really important role, just like a project manager. But they're a block and tackle, an organizer kind of thing. So if you're more of that kind of person versus a customer facing and voice of the customer type of person, then you might want to explore that role.
I think those are really good points though, and something worth pointing out, especially for this group. And Tim asked PMI ACP with a question mark. Is that a good one to kind of reference? But I think the things you've mentioned on this group, a lot of times we'll focus very heavily on the Salesforce certs, right? Getting those certs, knocking them out. Leigh-Anne, you and I kind of talked about this, the cert collecting, right?
Yes.
Those certs are very good, but they're also somewhat siloed, right, for the Salesforce ecosystem.
That's
Whereas
right.
when you start looking at something like a Scrum or an Agile, you can kind of use that everywhere. I like to kind of go back. Dave hears it a lot from me where, you know, the developer side of the house has a good skill set that can transfer to other platforms, right? You can learn C very quickly. You can learn Java very quickly. The syntax is different, but the problem solving and the core curriculum is the same. And it's very similar with Agile, where you could transfer that very quickly. So if we did have glitches or issues in the ecosystem, you know, you can transfer it around. So that's worth kind of pointing out. So PMI, ACP, any thoughts on that for Tim?
I'm not sure what the ACP one is. I have the PMP, and I do know that there's a program manager one that I was looking at, but those ones, they're tough certifications. I will die with my PMP. That was not an easy cert. Like, I am
I've
not
heard
letting
that.
that thing expire, is what I'm trying to say. Like, it's, you know, it's one of those things where sometimes it is worth getting the letters behind your name, right? If you're not doing anything else, or if you really do feel like you've hit some sort of limit to, you know, what your pay grades are, if you will, like sometimes those letters do help. Certifications for Salesforce, I have a very different point of view. I see that more as more of a license to drive, if you will. Like, if you actually are working on a project and you really need to perfect your skills particular to that cloud, 100% go get that cert, because it will keep you focused on the content that you really need to deliver a really great final result for your customers or for whatever you're building. But I don't know. I'm not really a fan of the cert collection, because you don't get the application that you really need to truly understand the value of that cert. But, you know, I have 11 certifications. I am a cert junkie. So I'm like, you know, preaching to, I guess, like the choir. But I guess I would just say, don't just get a cert just to think that that's going to get you a job, or that will get your, you know, pay grade a little bit higher. So there's certain certifications that will do that, but I wouldn't think of a Salesforce certification as one of those things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that if you have a role where you know that this certification is going to help you be more effective in that role, and or have more of a toolkit to fall back on. A lot of times that's the really helpful part of getting the certification, is you have access to so many new ideas and artifacts and processes to be more effective in your role. But to your point, I know that PMP is a beast of a cert to get. And, you know, if you don't have a really clear ROI on the cert, some of those that are more intensive, I wouldn't recommend just to have. The Agile certifications tend to be a couple of days, so they're pretty lightweight and they can help across a variety of things. So I always recommend Agile as a pretty low risk time investment, and they're going to help you anyway. There's also a lot more in SAFe. So SAFe is a framework similar to Scrum. It's in the Agile methodology. And they have a role called a release train engineer, which is kind of a hybrid role of Agile project management related to a specific team of teams. So let's say you have a group of 5 teams that all contribute to a single product. And we'd call that like a product line, for example, or a value stream. And the person who is the release train engineer would be the person that is managing the delivery and flow of work from all of those 5 teams to one single outcome delivery. And so I would say that that is a really good place for kind of a hybrid role between product and project, if you can't quite decide which way you want to go into. And it also doesn't require a ton of domain expertise. I will say the one thing with product management or product ownership, you have to have a certain degree of domain expertise in order to be successful. So you either need to know the market really well, the product really well, the customers really well. So it can be difficult to jump into product management. Typically, people would either take a path through being an engineer on the team and then moving over if you have the business acumen and soft skills, or being a business analyst on the team and working your way up into product management. But the release train engineer is a really cool, very translatable kind of hybrid role where you can be successful regardless of the market or the team domain expertise that you have.
That's a good
Leigh-Anne,
one. I didn't know about that. Yeah, I had never heard about that release train engineer, but I think that's a really great, great suggestion, Jessica. And then you said something else that really stuck out here. Domain expertise as a requirement for product management. I couldn't agree more. When I was in field service and I was interviewing, I'm recorded. It's safe to say. I did explore interviewing with other field service products out there, like competitors to Salesforce. And, we just geeked out on the product problems that we're trying to solve in field service. Like what will be the future of, no screens, no keyboards. You just have like the eyeglasses and whatever, and you're using your hands to, as the technicians are out there making repairs, how are they going to update Salesforce? Like Salesforce, we have an app that, you update the status, you update what products you used. But what if we didn't have that? What if we had glasses, right? So, and what role would augmented reality play for field service? So we had that's where, the role of a product manager really shines when you have that domain expertise, because you really do understand the problem that you're trying to solve. So yeah, I would echo that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, that's really good. I think we've definitely done slightly different than we normally, a different track than we normally go when we kind of talk here in the office hours, which is usually very heavy on Salesforce and the certs and the entry into the ecosystem. But kind of talking about some of that agile stuff has given me flashbacks to delivery days where you don't think any of that stuff is important, right? You want to be the cool cat who's got their fingers on the keyboard and doing the config and making cool flows until you get your first really bad user story from someone. And you're like, I don't even know what you're asking for. And flip that around when you get stuck with writing a user story and suddenly you're like, what do I write? Like, it looks so simple. You're like, oh, as an end user, I want to, and then someone's like, what are you even asking? And you're like, ooh.
Right.
And so suddenly you realize how important the Scrum Master and who writes the user stories and keeps everything on track and agile, and how you are able to iterate with a customer and get them so much closer to what they want by just kind of having those sprints and kind of building it up, and the points and how much work you're going to take on. It's far more intricate than you initially give it credit for until you're really in it. And then when it's working smooth, you take it for granted. When it's not working smooth, it's like grinding your teeth together. I'm gonna have deep flashbacks tonight. So with that being said, Megan, go ahead. And Dave has a question, or I'm sorry, a hand up. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, and I apologize for the background noise. I am at a Starbucks outside because they don't have indoor seating, which I didn't realize until I sat down. No, but Megan brings up a great point about, how do you address products that need rapid updates or that prospects or customers have issues with in real time? And so I would want to know, Leigh-Anne and Jessica, what your thoughts are.
If I could be an emoji face right now, it's the teeth bearing emoji.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll just start off by saying that these things happen all the time, which was why my role existed at Salesforce with CSG architects. When these things happen, customers would come and complain to their account executives saying, shouldn't be this hard. And, our role was to help them, understand where they took a left instead of a right kind of thing. there is like a release management piece, a component to, I would say, product management, project management that usually happens, and something might have been misstepped. There might have been, many things. Like change management is a big factor too, and user testing. It could be lack of communications. There's a number of things that could have happened. And when it's the first initial release, a lot of customers, if it's a big bang kind of approach where they just do the whole thing, like, and it typically is with waterfall, right, Jessica? Like they're building like a whole thing without very many release testing, without a proof of concept. Really, the proof of concept is like, okay, well, here's this big thing. You went from something that you were using for, I don't know, 15 years for everything in your whole life, and we just built something for you in 6 months, and it's only like actually this much. It's people take for granted change management. I'll let Jessica take the floor.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It can be any of those things. It can be all of those things. It can be a perfect storm of things gone wrong. And I think that's why the role of both product and project management, especially in a big rollout like this, is so important. And there is a skill in a go-to-market strategy. And how are we going to release this? And what is the safest way for us to do this? I'm a big firm believer in a beta test group. So you go out and find people that are friendlies, find people that are on board with the vision that you're trying to get to, and have them help you with, user testing. We want to make sure that we have good testing automation before we roll something out, but there are always going to be things that people can find that are influenced by the way that they think and the way that they use things that we would never expect or carry out. And with every type of rollout that you do, there is going to be something that goes wrong, and you learn from it. And that is going back to having those toolkits and having the best practices from some of these certifications. That's where you can get a lot more of that knowledge. And then going into, if it is a service or a product offering that people are relying on to complete some certain actions, there is a level of incident management that you have to do, which is, hey, we don't just get to release software out into the wild, but we have to make sure that our service level agreements are being hit, that we have a good way to categorize any incidents that we have a plan to resolve, we do a root cause analysis, we make sure that we build testing automation around it so it doesn't happen again. There's not just building the thing, there's releasing the thing, and then there's also maintaining service levels going forward. There is another certification that if you do work in more of an infrastructure or platform environment called ITIL, ITIL, and their most recent version has Agile and product management included in it as well. And that's where you would kind of learn the difference between a service owner, service manager, product manager. There's a lot of different roles depending on the scope and complexity of the thing that you're supporting.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, in any implementation, no matter how small or how big, there's going to be bugs and glitches that you thought you had. You thought you had run them all down. I mean, I worked on the VA, 3 of the modules of the VA, and we get all the way through CI/CD, right? And drop a bombshell right in there into staging at the very last minute. And you're like, oh my God. It happens. You think you get it. And then you do the crisis management to start, fixing it, rolling it back, doing what needs to be done. So yeah, that's part of the process. You think, or at least I thought when you came into the system, right, as you do sandboxes into production, or you do CI/CD, or you use something like Flowsum or Capado to push packages up into production, that it's just this smooth, simple process. And it is not. The job is really about handling the dynamics of fixing the flaws and iterating and changing it, and which brings us back to the product managers to figure out how to make it better, right? So we are
sorry, I just want to layer in, sorry Dave, a lot of our larger customers, like the Salesforce larger customers, their Salesforce admin team is deep. They've got 30 people on the team and they call themselves product owners. And they have the same sort of, kind of structure that they would, and they consider their build of Salesforce their product. So it's it is interesting. And I love, Jessica, your point about like it's first the go-to-market strategy, first it's the go live of the thing that you build, and then it's the ongoing support and then iteration as you grow and scale it to add more features and add more users to that product. So a lot of testing, they call them smoke testing, where you're in regression testing, where you're testing out the existing features on top of the new features. Love the beta testers. You can't test the thing enough, right? So there's definitely a lot of stories out there of where you get your scars and your bruises and you cry so many tears and shots of tequila and things, all the things.
I was just going to say it. And
I said that one for you.
testing is the most non-sexy, boring thing out there, but really test-driven development, whether it's even in low code, no code, or pro code, right? Whether you're actually writing hard code or you're just making a flow, thinking about it from a test-driven development perspective is phenomenal once you start to wrap your head around it, right? Because that's how you start to get the product to go where you need it to. And Kathy made a comment in here about this is all completely over your head. And everyone comes into this, and this is all somewhat higher level discussion that we're having, right? But it's still exposure. So just hang on and it'll come to you and you'll start to get in. You get into the ecosystem, you start doing implementation and it starts coming on strong and you're like, oh, I remember when these knuckleheads were talking about CI/CD the other day on office hours. So we're a little well past our midpoint. So let's get a group photo here. Important part is always need to be branding. You can put this stuff up. We'll have it up on LinkedIn and Twitter tomorrow. We'll tag everyone in the photo. We'll see Dave Nava at a Starbucks in somewhere land. If you only had your first name showing in Google Meet and want to be tagged, please feel free to add a comment in the chat window. We'll pick up on it and we'll add it in. And for everyone who wants to participate in the photo, please unmute your video and grab a screenshot. Hold on comments for a second. I'm going to expand the screen here just so I can get everyone. And I'll give you a 3, 2, 1. All right, I think I got it. I am always, nice. Oh God, I always look horrible in these.
Because you're concentrating on taking the photo. You've got your concentrating face on.
Yeah, it's my focus face. Every time I see it the next day, I'm like, ooh, there's another doozy. What can you do? I don't think we have a lot to work with to begin with, so we're just going to take what we can. On. So with all that discussion, since we've gone way off the road, but yet still on the path of the product, right? We're all kind of around there. How do you identify new product opportunities or potential areas for expansion?
That's a good one.
Leigh-Anne, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll say, so in my garden leave time off, I started hanging out with a group of people called Creative Mornings, and you might have one in your city. I didn't know such a community existed, but if there was a community that gave the Trailblazer community a run for their money, check out Creative Mornings. There was a no-code product manager and that presented, and she said, yes, Creative Mornings. And she said that her best ideas came when she was the key user. So she was trying to solve a problem for herself, and that's where she got her best ideas. And the idea that she had was she is actively dating and she didn't want to stay connected with the person or right before they actually form a partnership. So the step before was, well, what if you want to send them like a gift or like a follow-up or something like that? She created this intermediary app that would attach to the dating app, and you would purchase a little gift, a chocolate or flower or whatever, and that intermediary would send the gift. So privacy was totally protected. You're still able to reach out and say, hey, I really enjoyed our time together, as a way to reach out. So she created that app. Kind of a cool idea. So she was the key user and she solved one of her problems. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I just thought it was fascinating.
Go ahead, Jessica.
I always found it to be, and this is a key teaching in the Pragmatic Institute certification, is that basically none of your good ideas are going to come from being in an office, and it's all going to be sitting with your users, sitting with your customers, observing them, listening to them. There's also, you know, again, as you go into larger and more complex area, there's user research, there's user strategy, there's user design, but it all comes down to what are people doing with your software, or what do they wish that they could do, and how much time are they spending on different things. So in my past, there was a time when we were building software for financial advisors that were in the 401k market. And then we started to go up market and work with financial institutions. And I had no idea how their businesses worked, because that's not something you can easily Google. And so I would just go sit on the floor with the users and I would observe them for the whole day. And I would say, okay, they have to create 40 reports and email them out, and it takes them 5 clicks to do each thing. And then they have to go put it into a PDF, slap their logo on top of it, and email it out. And this task takes them like 2 hours per day, where, wow, we can really automate this entire thing. They can upload their logo, they can, you know, bulk select, integrate it into their email client and send it out. And so that's not something I would have thought of myself as a valuable thing. But if I'm watching people do it and assessing how much time they potentially are wasting by doing all of these clicks, that's a really easy win for us to identify. I had another time when we were building some software for a large gym, and they were focusing on retaining members. And of course, we can sit in an office and say, oh, okay, here's a model to show you who is likely to quit their gym membership, and here's the people you need to reach out to. But we actually went out and talked to different locations to say, what are ways that you find your members to be more engaged, and what are some programs you have, and how should we build this in such a way as it to be the most effective way for your team members to use it. So you might start with an idea and you might think, I have a really good sense of what needs to be built. And I always tell people, just go look, just go observe, just go listen, put yourself in their shoes, figure out where they're spending the time. And that ultimately builds your domain acumen and experience. And that's the best way to get to be a better product owner, better product manager, better business analyst, is just to observe, listen, and think about, from a user empathy perspective, how can I make this person's life easier or better?
Love that.
Yeah.
There's a education company, IDEO. They're all about human-centered design, and it is a wonderful. I'm like just like clicks away from signing up for that program next. But yeah, IDE, is it OU or is it just you? It's, I don't know. I didn't click the link, so I'm on the phone. But it's IDEO. Yes, that. Thank you. Design Think certification. Yes, that's the one that I was going to sign up for. It's a really a great concept. And before I left, the last project that I did was set up a program for engineers to do what we call ride-alongs. So as a solution engineer or as an outbound product manager, we would go visit customers all the time, but who really needs to see it are the engineers. So we invited some engineers to some of our on-sites, and well, unfortunately, I only had 2 before I left, but it was a really great experiment to have, and they got such a great, joining sales calls. Yeah, Jessica, totally. Get in front of the customer.
Yeah, I was going to, at some point, as you work in implementation, even as solution engineers, you will start to think you're smarter than the user or smarter than the customer. And no, they don't really need this. What they really need is this. And it's no, they are the end user. They're the ones that are down in the trenches, clicking the buttons, doing whatever task it is they're doing. The second you feel that, you need to kind of check yourself, right? And start saying, okay, this is not the way to be looking at this. We can't, you'll start to try and mend the customer or the user for the product and not vice versa. And that is not how it works, right? But you fall in love with your own idea or your own build, your own project, and you have to kind of stop that and kind of look at it from their perspective. I'm seeing the disappointed mom look from Leigh-Anne right now.
It's
Look at the
so
screen.
true. No, it's like, because honestly, there were so many conversations where I actually had to say to the customer, well, why do you want to do that? It seems like it's a lot more clicks. Like, we have a process where you can just optimize your whole schedule. You don't have to worry about where the jobs go, right? Like, you kind of think that that's such a great idea, but the customer's like, but I need to control who does what job and when. So, you know, you take for granted, right? You like exactly what you say, you fall in love with your product and you think it's the best thing and it is saving a lot of time, but that's still not what the customer wants. So we didn't have a way for them to really do it manually. And so we had to think creatively on how to support that.
Yeah, you can try and educate them if it really is a good idea and you've seen it work before, but at the end of the day, they're the ones buying the license and wants the product, you know. Akib, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Hi, thank you, Leigh-Anne and Jessica, for being here. So I have a twofold question. So first one is for the entry people who are asking for like certification, things like that. So going back to your career and starting off in the product management kind of roles, like what are some tips you'd give to people in terms of demos they can do, hands-on practices they can do to build those skills that they can show in their portfolios or on LinkedIn post? So that's question one. Because I do feel like certifications matter, but I've worked with a lot of product managers who are just like really good with people, really good with being ownership minded, and they can get projects going really well. And so my second question is, how does a product manager make sure the technical depths within projects stay low? I've been in so many Salesforce orgs and projects where the technical depth just keep on building because there's no ownership between what the leadership C-suite people want versus what end users want, right? I've seen it over and over again where product managers are not able to prioritize who do we focus on? Do we focus on the end users and what they need to get their work done and clicks to be done versus what the C-suite executives want? And that's something I'm going through right now in my orgs. So would love to hear about that aspect from you all. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Jessica.
Yeah, Jessica, you
I
go
think
first.
there's a few ways to get into product management. Number one, I think there are a lot more schools and programs that you can leverage to build up your skills. But if you're already working on a team, I've mentored and coached a lot of people who are, you know, telling me I really want to get into product. And it's easier if you're already an engineer on the team or QA analyst or something like that. Your product team, and I'm going to include business analysts, sometimes called BSAs, business systems analysts, product owners, product managers. They always are spinning a million plates. And so if you say, hey, I would like to help you write user stories, that is the easiest way to get involved. And learning the skill of writing really good user stories and clear acceptance criteria is the basis for the entire role that you're doing, even all the way up the chain in product. No matter how high you get, that is a foundational skill, and that is what determines the success of the product. And so if you're already working as an engineer or QA analyst or an intern or any role, and you say, I want to help with writing user stories, that's a good way to get domain expertise, a good way to build your skills, and a good way to build trust with the product team. And so typically, okay, we're going to move you into being a BSA on this project maybe, and you can write user stories for this project. If you do a great job, they're going to tap you to do that more. So the career progression from beginning to, you know, rising up would typically be BSA to product owner to product manager to senior product manager to product line manager to product director, all the way up, depending on the scope and the complexity of it. And I always just tell people, get involved and learn, and it will take some time. It's a mixture of being able to frame problems really well, being organized, and then also having great people skills, because you need to have your people skills with your engineers and developers, with your customers, with your users. And it typically ends up being a role where you're very comfortable with ambiguity. I don't know all of the solutions or all of the data that I need to know, but I feel comfortable enough at a certain point to be able to define which path we should go down. And really just jumping in, there's no better way than hands-on experience in writing that. And then from a technical debt perspective, and I'll pass it over to you after this, Leigh-Anne, the mindset of product mindset. So there's a bunch of courses and materials you can read up on product mindset, but it really is, do I own this product and this capability from a long-term perspective? And do I care about the junk that I'm introducing into my platform and in my infrastructure? Or am I just kind of trying to turn it around and make a customer happy from a short term, and I don't care about technical debt that I'm incurring? That's why I really, we're doing an agile transformation, and we're doing a product transformation in IT to change that mindset to, hey, we own this now. I own it in 5 years. I own it in 10 years. It is my house. I live in it. I have to make sure that the pipes aren't leaky. In many cases, the way that I would pitch this to leadership is a positive return on investment. If I am having to spend 20% of my capacity just doing foundational work, keeping the lights on, or managing incidents because I have so much technical debt, and that's taking away from capacity that I could be spending on building new features, I could build a business case, go to my technical leadership and say, hey, if I spend the next 4 sprints paying down this chunk of technical debt, I would expect to see 5 to 10% less of recurring incidents, and therefore I could spend this much more money on building new features. And so it's really you're managing the ROI of the team that you have working on this thing. And sometimes it's a hard sell, but usually it's like a pretty easy win-win. If you have the ability to take that capacity and prove that you can increase your output in the future, that's a better way to approach it.
Everything she said, because I know that we're at time, so hopefully my facial expressions tell the story.
Yeah, that was literally some pure gold right there. I was like,
Yes,
thank God this is
exactly.
recorded, because like, Jessica, pure gold. I mean, it was like, wow. Because that is the conversation you have to have. Like, what's the value in this, right? Why are we doing this? What are we doing this? And technical debt, you don't think it's something you read about until you got a ton of it floating around. And it's just, it comes.
Can't make money off of technical debt, right? Like if you add a new feature, you could make more money. But cleaning up the technical debt, there isn't a dollar sign to it, but the productivity has a dollar sign. So that was perfectly well done. Yeah, Jessica, thank you.
For sure. So before we close, we're at the top of the hour. I'd like to thank Jessica and Leigh-Anne. Incredible session, really, really good information put out. But I'd like to thank you for co-hosting tonight. Been awesome having you here and getting a perspective on product management and the topics we discussed. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for
Thank you
having
for the
us.
invite. Nice to see you all.
Thanks,
And
everybody.
with that, thank you so much for attending. Hope to see you next. Actually, we won't be on next week. We're on 2 weeks from now. We'll be on the 19th.
Yep.
Geraldine Hall will be hosting that. So we'll see you then, and have a great Wednesday night.
Bye.